Thanks for being here today. Today I wanted to talk about the subject of Gillette, masculinity and toxic masculinity. The first thing I wanted to mention was with regard to the Gillette advert. Now I don't know if you've seen this advert recently, but this has been causing something of a stir in the online community because Gillette had amended their slogan from the best a man can get to the best a man can be, and had produced an advert that was critical of certain aspects of masculinity when it comes to bullying, to using physical aggression, and it was showing examples of more, what I would call more positive aspects of masculinity, more caring, more supportive, more sharing, and more, you could say loving aspects of masculinity. A quiet strength versus an overt strength, if you want to call it that way. A strength that comes from your character, not from your muscles, not from your ability to fight or your ability to victimize other people, for example. And I thought that was an interesting change in tack. I mean, Juliette has advertised on the basis of this father to son type mentality for many, many years. The idea that the father passes on, you know, the skills, the techniques to the son, that sons will use the razors that their fathers use, that kind of idea. And it's a powerful image, the idea of traits being passed from fathers to sons. And it's certainly true. Fathers are a heavy influence on their sons. And the idea that as a man you have some responsibility for the qualities that you pass on to your son, the information that they receive, the norms that they establish within their personality, these are things that will be passed on. Now, obviously mothers influence sons and fathers influence daughters, etc., etc. But this is the marketing campaign of Gillette. It is from father to son, and it's a generational thing. It goes down through those generations. And I thought that was really interesting, especially changing their slogan to the best a man can be. I thought there was a lot of positivity within the actual marketing campaign, within the advert itself. And the fact that that was missed or was glossed over by people who reacted to it on a sort of visceral level, on a quite, certainly a very rejecting level of what it was that they were seeing and the degree to which they weren't happy with what they were seeing there. I read some of the comments and, I've looked at some of the downvoting and stuff that was going on online. And a lot of it does seem to be revolving purely around the idea that Gillette used to represent masculinity, and masculinity was being attacked by this advert. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. The idea that it isn't masculine to be quietly strong. The idea that to be masculine means you have to be overtly strong. For me, this is the key thing behind this idea of toxic masculinity. One of the things that I've always been convinced of is that the people who fight hardest to convince people that they are not a certain way are those who are secretly hiding something about themselves. Now, I recently read an article and a comment from a gay man who was complaining about this idea. He was raising a point about this idea, and I thought this was a very interesting point. This idea that it isn't fair to make that attribution. It's one that I've always considered, but it gave me pause for thought. This idea that if you just assume that everyone who is homophobic is secretly gay, and that what they're doing is they're pushing back on it, essentially what we're saying is that homophobia is within the gay community, because the gay community consists therefore of people who are okay with it and those who are not okay with it and therefore react homophobically. And I thought that was an interesting point. I'm not sure what difference it makes, but I took that point on board, and it's made me kind of think a little bit about this idea that it's always a suppression of inner turmoil and inner guilt, which is released as aggression and anger and violence towards something that you yourself would be very much interested in. This is by no means it's not my theory. It's by no means a new theory. It's a very old adage that this is the case, but I've always felt that way, but it gave me pause for thought to hear that expressed in that way. Having said that, again, my assumption is that anyone who needs to shout to the world, whether that is through YouTube comments or whether that's through any form of media, whatever it is you're doing, anyone who feels the need to shout to the world about how masculine they are, about how manly they are, doubts their masculinity. You must doubt your masculinity to feel the need to articulate it so strongly, to push it out into other people's worlds. When I look at my YouTube comments and I see on occasional videos this kind of toxic behaviour, again, I always wonder what type of man, let's say we'll take just comments from men, because it is mostly men, what kind of man sees my video and feels the need to comment? What kind of man sees that and thinks, I have to say something about this? This cannot go by without my registering my disagreement. And my assumption, therefore, has always been that that comes from a sense of insecurity. A sense that unless you are overt about your passionate opposition to something, there's a chance, just a chance, that people might think you're complicit. People might think you're allied with that community. And even in our anonymous internet world, in our anonymous world where you can watch something and pause it, stop it, close your browser, you can move on to the next thing and no one would ever know the difference whatsoever. People still feel the need to jump in and make that negative comment, to put that that rejection out there into the world. And that, I find, to me, is the bedrock of this toxic masculinity culture. If you consider yourself to be a strong man, and I consider myself to be, not in these videos, but I consider myself to be a strong man. I consider myself to be a good earner. I consider that I provide for my wife and family. I consider that I am an emotional support to my family. I consider that I am an open and understanding and complex person who understands the nuance of the world, that things are not black and white. Things are not divided into good and bad for the most part, and that there are many sides to a story. And that when you're looking at the world and you're trying to make up your opinion about the world, it is interesting and useful to think about both of those sides. And I consider all of that to be the roles of a man, the way in which a man should present himself. And I think what's of interest to me as I move forward in this subject, as I think more and more about this, is that I'm starting as an individual to doubt the idea that there's any form of gender behaviour at all, particularly binary gender behaviour. When I think about myself and I wonder what traits of mine are manly, practical traits are supposedly manly. Doing DIY, building things, making stuff, are supposedly manly traits. But I don't know what about that is manly. I don't understand what about that makes me more manly than some other activity. Cooking is supposed to be a feminine trait, yet I love cooking. And being good at something, being good at following instructions, being good at applying yourself to a particular type of activity, I don't understand what about that isn't manly. I don't get it. And for me, I think there's certainly a point that I've arrived at, and I think there's a point that I hope we will get to. And I think maybe that's where some of this fear ultimately comes from, is the idea that there really isn't much out there that separates men from women. The idea that being good at practical stuff makes you manly, and that you can judge your masculinity by that, I think is outdated. I don't think it's it's really relevant concept, and I don't think it's a worthy way of judging yourself as a man. And I'm coming more and more to the conclusion that when I think of myself, I think more of my qualities as a human these days than I ever do about my qualities as a man, or as a woman for that matter. I think about my qualities as a human, as a person. Am I nice to know? Am I helpful? Am I considerate of other people's feelings? Am I useful in my family? Am I useful in my community? Do I contribute? What are my contributions? Do I make a difference in the lives of the people who are close around me? Do I have a good moral compass? Do I send out positivity into the world? None of that I consider to be female or male traits. Yet they are the things that I value. They are the things that I think of when I'm thinking of positive characteristics and ways in which I want to present myself to the world, and to make some small difference to those I see around me. But none of those I think of as being overtly masculine or overtly feminine. They are simply good human characteristics. And I'm hoping that what we're seeing in terms of toxic masculinity is the last kicks and the last acts of aggression of a wounded beast, something that has basically, the end is nigh for this type of behaviour. I hope this is the case. And what we're seeing are the last desperate, aggressive throes of rejection, of panic lashing out, of a creature that is on its way out and knows it's on its way out and is lashing out in desperation. I really do hope that is the case of what we're seeing today. It comes in many forms of society. I see it on YouTube here. I get it in all sorts of comments, left, right and centre. And I think it's hopefully time that has gone and has left us behind. Anyway, that was my views on the subject of masculinity, toxic masculinity, how this kind of fits into our culture. I applaud Gillette for what they did. I think they did a really good job. I think it's a great initiative. I really hope they stick with it. I hope they continue with this. I hope they don't backpedal. This feels like the kind of thing where to walk this back for fear of loss of sales would be detrimental. I think it would be very difficult for any other company in this area to come forth and promote itself as being anti-Gillette. I think it'd be I don't understand who you'd lose competition to. If you think that, you want to shave your face, but actually Wilkinson Sword, they're the brand of the women-hating misogynist, then I think if that were to happen, you'd very quickly see other brands coming out and making exactly the same statements, because it's just a decent thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And it's good. I know this has been done by other brands in the past, and actually by other razor brands as well. But it's interesting to see Gillette do it. One of the big two in the marketplace. Nice to see something positive happening in this area, and I hope it will continue. I hope the time of being advertised to by stereotype is hopefully fading, and will be a thing of the past. Anyway, have you seen the advert? What do you think of it? If anyone's got any comments, please let me know in the comment section down below. You can otherwise reach me through my email address, which is julietteisnoir@gmail.com, or through my website, which is julietnoir.uk. Feel free to like, share and subscribe. Click the little bell to stay notified on upcoming videos. And I look forward to talking to you all again soon. Thanks for joining me here today. And as ever, bye. Bye.